Welcome, Seekers, to my home. You can call me the Curator, as I will be your guide through these millennia of lore to sate the curiosity which has brought you to me. Today we will be covering one of the founding legions of the Legiones Astartes, one that held the foundations of the Imperium together when all hope was lost. Today we discuss the 7th Legion, the Imperial Fists. The Imperial Fists are the 7th Legion of the original 20 legions made to reunite humanity with Terra. While they would later be given the name the Imperial Fists by the Emperor, for most of their history before their Primarch's reunification, they were simply referred to as the 7th Legion. Like many of the legions, the records before the time of the Primarch are sparse and not to be trusted. Before I can talk of the Legion, however, we must first discuss how it is they waged war. The Imperial Fists acted as a reserve force for the early years of the Great Crusade, rapidly redeploying to different battlefields to be where they were needed most, to achieve a breakthrough, or to speed up campaigns because of their affinity as siege specialists and as shock troops. However, for the members of the 7th Legion, the completion of their goal held more importance than the method. Common aspiration for the Sons of Dorn is an unbreakable force of will. When an Imperial Fist closes upon your world, you must either break through it or break yourself upon it. This doctrine was extended to the Legion's fleet. In command of the most ships out of any Legion, the Imperial Fist preferred the use of battleships as mobile hardpoints, creating fortresses of ceramite and macro batteries to brawl with the enemy fleet while destroyer groups harassed their flank. This doctrine would also be manifested in the near mythical Phalanx, a mobile fortress said to be from the darkest ages of technology. Phalanx would become the Legion's center of command, and as such, it was a fortress first and a warship second. In the void, it was a slow but impossible foe to overcome, mirroring the indomitable will of the Primarch who commanded it. But when its guns fell silent and the 7th Legion descended upon a world, it became a central hub of command. Thousands of Marines and millions of tons of materiel could flow in and out of the mobile fortress in an hour, while its bridge could coordinate an entire sector's campaign. The recruitment for the Legion was very decentralized. With each world they conquered, they would build upon it a fortress and assign it a seneschal, which would tide the population for recruits to send back to the Legion. These seneschals would be entirely removed from the planet's governorship, only focused on providing more Marines for the Legion. The 7th did not want vassals, it wanted recruits. The topic of a Legion's Primarch will always require a dedicated session on their exploits, but a Legion cannot be fully discussed without their progenitor. For the Imperial Fists, that progenitor is Dorn. Discovered on the planet of Inwit, an ice world on the edge of Segmentum Solar. Inwit is tidally locked, with one side always facing its system's brown star, and the other side locked in eternal night. On its surface, techno-barbarian clans eke out an existence against the cold. While savage, they prove to be more sophisticated than the clans which ravaged Terra's soil before the days of Unity. When the Emperor discovered Inwit, the Primarch greeted his gene father with a working phalanx and a stellar empire to call his own. In their first meeting, when Dorn swore his fealty to the Emperor and gifted to him the empire Dorn had carved from the stars, he also gifted to the Emperor ownership of the phalanx. The Emperor, in a very similar sign of trust, returned the phalanx to Dorn and united him at last with the 7th Legion. With Dorn reunited, his assimilation with the Legion was almost seamless. He would remain silent at first around them, until he had observed the Legion in battle. When his sons finally received the Primarch's approval, Rogul told the Legion that they had much to learn before plunging back into the stars. With Rogul in command of the Imperial Fists, the Legion accrued victories beyond a measure. Such was their reputation that the Emperor himself requested accompaniment on many occasions, with Rogul and the Imperial Fist spending the most time of the Emperor during the Great Crusade than any other Legion barring the Luna Wolves. The Unheard War was an event before my time within the Imperium, and one of the final battles for the unification of Sol. It was here that the mettle of the Seventh was truly shown, in a war with no survivors. The Unheard War was a battle above Neptune. There were void habitats inhabited by a group of people called the Azurites. While they were negotiating to join the Imperium peacefully, similar to the Jovian clans of Jupiter, the stations were attacked by pirates from the outskirts of Sol. The Imperium, now intent on keeping its peacefully consolidated stations, sent the Imperial Fist to drive off the pirates. Even though they only deployed a demi-company, or 50 Marines, putting Astartes against pirates is equivalent to a rad bomb against a coughing infant. Despite the fact their last two waves were turned into chunky red paint, the pirates weren't going to take the loss gracefully. Launching 3 torpedoes at the station, the singular torpedo that managed to make its mark carried with it but a single psyker, infected with a psychic plague. This plague would infect all who heard the tortured wails of those already afflicted. The screaming infected the Azurites like wildfire, causing them to scream until their vocal cords ripped from the strain. When they could no longer scream, their bodies would mutate into hideous blobs until the mutations were too much for the host body to bear. To combat the plague, and without orders from the wider Imperium as external communications risked the chance of the plague spread, the 50 Imperial Fists deafened themselves, fighting tooth and nail through waves of Azurites turned chaos spawn to the station's reactor. There, they overloaded the power generators and sent the station into meltdown, taking all of the Azurites and the psychic plague with them. After news of their sacrifice reached Terra, the Emperor requested that the Bell of Souls be rung for the first time to honor their deeds. No legion exists in a vacuum, and relationships between the legions can be complicated for some, such as the Emperor's children, or very mundane, such as the Raven Guard. Yet the Fist's role as siege breakers left them shoulder to shoulder with many of their cousin legions whose opinions and bonds would define the legion moving forward. The first and most important of these relationships was one shared with the Luna Wolves. Both the Imperial Fists and the Luna Wolves shared respect for one another, but not to the degree Rogel and Horus did. When Rogel was first found, it was Horus whom taught him the way of the Imperium and how to lead the legion he had been given. The situation would leave Rogel looking up to Horus in many respects as an older brother, a feeling that would be like a twisted knife when Horus's true colors were revealed. Such was the respect for one another that Horus praised Dorn and his sons frequently, declaring that should his legion, seen as masters of offense, ever clash with the Fists, it would only end in bloody stalemate. The Imperial Fist's relationship with the Blood Angels begins before the discovery of their Primarch Sanguinius. While the Blood Angels now are known for their beauty, grace, and restraint, the Revenant Legion they were before their Gene Father was savage. Marines would commonly leave their armor drenched in their enemies' gore, and eat the bodies of those who had fallen. Sometimes they would even eat those still alive, but wounded and nearing death. This barbarity did not sit well with Rogel Dorn, and thus he considered enacting censure upon the precursor 9th Legion by sending Sigismund to reign in its command. This disdain would eventually change with the reforms Sanguinius applied to the 9th, and this relationship would change drastically. That, at the end of the Siege of Terra, Sanguinius issued his farewell to Rogel Dorn with these words: "Farewell, Rogel. If we do not meet again in the flesh, know that it was an honor being your brother." I group both of these legions together as Seekers because the relationship between the Imperial Fists and both of these legions were similar. Neither particularly hated the other over personal slights, but because of ideological difference. The Imperial Fists believed the Night Lords and Alpha Legion's tactics to be antithetical to the Imperial truth. They believed that compliance through fear and lies would corrupt the foundation of the Imperium they wished to bring. But alas, there is one last legion in which the Imperial Fists had an infamous relationship, yet they deserve their own section. The rivalry between the Iron Warriors and Imperial Fists are nearly as old as both legions, Seekers. Regardless as to how the galaxy at large changes, the fires of hatred between them have not dulled. Originally, the fracture between these legions only existed in the Primarchs. For every honor earned by Dorn, another reason for scorn was added by Perturabo. By the time of the Horus Heresy, these two coming to blows was merely the culmination of a century of rivalry. Even as the chronometer turns to the 42nd millennium, the fire between these two has only intensified and blinded both legions to ruin. The first to folly was the Iron Warriors at the Siege of Terra. Originally assigned to defend the Iron Circle, a perimeter around the Sol system in order to slow down the incoming reinforcements, the Iron Warriors under Perturabo's command abandoned it as their hatred of the Imperial Fists and their personal pride drove them to land on Terra and commit to the siege. While the Iron Warriors would proceed to make gains in that siege, such as the conquest of the Lionsgate spaceports, they would inevitably leave the siege after the failure of the Saturnine Gambit, as Perturabo and Dorn would clash minds for the final time before the outcome of the siege itself. The Imperial Fist's folly would come during the Scouring. Rogel Dorn, in mourning of the Emperor, led a crusade through the Sebastus sector to answer a goading challenge from the Lord of Iron in a siege that would become known as the Iron Cage. Bringing the entirety of the 7th Legion, Dorn assaulted Perturabo's fortress without a plan and without preparation. Both legions would maul each other here to mere shadows of their former selves. While the Imperial Fist would suffer more dead than the 4th, the Iron Lord could never quite finish off his rival's forces. The final trap laid out for Dorn was ruined by the arrival of the Ultramarines, forcing the Iron Warriors to flee. However, before their flight, Perturabo offered the gods of the warp the gene seed of all who had fallen, ascending himself to demonhood. This section's Seekers will be a general list of notable figures whom define the Legion's history. While it will not be comprehensive, it will hopefully give you figures in which to catch your eye for independent study. The first of these figures is Sigismund. Originally an orphan from the throne world, Sigismund stops to face the gangers whom sought to kidnap the few friends he had in that life. Yet the gangers instead handed him over to the Astartes program, where him and others were to be tested in trials before being sorted into the legions. Originally sorted into the 8th Legion, the Corpse Kings, Sigismund was transferred at last minute to the 7th. Within the 7th, he was a renowned duelist within the Templar Brethren, with few equals to match his blade. His skill and dedication would eventually lead him to undertaking the trials to become the Black Marshal, the leader of the Templar Brethren. But this trial was not easy. Sigismund fought 200 of his fellow Templars, back to back, in duel after duel, defeating each and every one, including his final opponent, Weapon Master Archameus, within a Contemptor Dreadnought chassis. Yet, while skilled, some managed to meet Sigismund's blade with their own. The first to do so was Diego Sevatarian, the first captain of the Night Lords. Both engaged in an honor duel to the first blood, of which lasted hours without a victor. It was only when Sevatar broke the rules of the honor duel that he was able to steal the advantage, headbutting Sigismund before scoring him with a strike that would end their bout. The second was Karn amidst the fall of the Lionsgate spaceport. Karn and Sigismund were quite close before the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, going as far as to refer to each other as Oath Brothers, and for this bond to be well known in both legions. Their first clash since the betrayal by the traitor forces would be at the siege, in the last hours of the Lionsgate spaceport. Karn's ferocity, alongside the boons received by his new patron, overwhelmed Sigismund. Karn nearly even ends Sigismund's life, with Sigismund being saved by the arrival of Rogel Dorn. Before the end of the siege, however, these two would clash once more under different circumstances. Wielding the Black Blade, a sword of unknown origin given to him by Malcador, the second clash would prove fatal for Karn. With but a few strokes, Karn was slain by the Emperor's champion. Sigismund's dueling skill is not the only facet of his story that garnered him infamy. After his secondment of command of the Retribution fleet to Captain Yoned, whispers of a meeting with Euphrates Keeler and disownment by his Primarch crept his way to my ears. Sigismund, it seemed, had begun to believe in the fledgling imperial cult, believing the Emperor to be a god, something his successors in the Black Templars would continue. The next of these figures would be Fafnir Rann, the head of the assault cadre. Taken from a rival clan of House Dorn from Inuit, the House of Rann was nearly killed to a man, and Fafnir inducted as an aspirant into the Imperial Fists. Somewhat of a lancer for Sigismund, Fafnir is an Imperial Fist by heraldry alone. His preferred method of combat is akin closer to the berserkers of the World Eaters than it is the grinding assaults of the Imperial Fists. Born Kai of Inuit, he was one of the first sons taken from the icy world after the Primarch's discovery. He took the name Archameus to honor a squadmate, whom sacrificed himself during one of the training exercises gone fatal. Eventually, all of the first sons would perish, save for Archameus, and because of that, he would eventually become known as the last of the first. Where Dorn is the Emperor's Preatorian, Archameus would be Dorn's, as Lord Huskarl. Archameus would later stand beside Dorn in the defense of Pluto, taking a near fatal blow from the Pale Spear, but by the time Opharius lay dead at Dorn's feet, so too did Archameus. Camba Diaz had an unremarkable service record before the outbreak of Horus's folly. Named co-commander of the Martian raid for equipment, and later as commander of the Fourth Sphere of Defense, his final moments were at Eternity Wall Spaceport, having gone as a defender despite knowing it would be sacrificed. At the spaceport, he would become one of the last surviving defenders, never taking a step back until his final breath. Welcome to the end of the video, Seekers, and I greet you here not as your curator, but as the creator. This section will be primarily my own thoughts and feelings on the Legion, including a healthy serving of bias. If you are here only to learn, then I implore you to like this video and subscribe so that I know you all want more before you go. If you want to listen to me ramble about my favorite Legion for a few minutes, then welcome. So, why is it that I like the Imperial Fists? The Imperial Fists, to me, have the same draw as events like the Fall of Reach from Halo, or the Hell's Reach storyline by Aaron Dembski-Bowden. They are soldiers meant to fight an unwinnable war, where the only chance of victory is by dragging out the conflict and forcing the enemy to pay for every step forward. They aren't expecting to be the heroes at the end walking from crumbling ruins, but the body holding up their flag surrounded by a mound of dead enemies. If you would allow me to get poetic for a second, I believe they share the same core theme as the poem Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Anthony Hopkins, albeit in a more Warhammery way. To stand against the dying of the light, even if you cannot change the outcome. There is also this imposter syndrome and the immense stress of the role that Rogel feels that makes me empathize with him so. Rogel undeniably waged the greatest defense he could against the traitors with the resources he had. His efforts are one of the very reasons that the Imperium still stands in the 42nd millennium. Yet if you had asked Dorn at the end of the heresy, he would have told you that he had failed. Despite that monumental achievement of saving humanity, he believed he failed. I apologize now if this comes off as rambling, but I hold an immense love for this Legion because when I found them, and Warhammer, I found them in a very tough time in my life where Dorn's struggles, his despair, his hopes, his aspirations spoke deeply to me at that point in my life. Even today, if I had not found the Imperial Fists and felt the desire to emulate their philosophy, I don't feel like I would be the same person that I am today. Before you all go, I would like to leave you with a quote from Weapon Master Appius. He told these words to Sigismund upon his desire to give up in the trials to lead the Templar Brethren of the Seventh, and I want you to let these words sink in, because whenever I find myself in a hard decision, I remember them. But who, if not you? Who will stand if you will not? Who will you let die in your place? And with that, I bid all you seekers adieu, and hope to see you again at the next lesson. If you have any suggestions for topics, questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you would like to suggest a faction, please leave your reasoning as well. I would love to hear any reasons for why you chose your own favorites. Until next time, Seekers.